Today's episode is with an adventurepreneur named Chris Hardwick. Chris took his first company from 1 million to 15 million in 5 years. He launched and grew 6 operating companies to 50 million in under 4 years. He took his entire family and moved them down to Australia to run a $3 billion infrastructure project. The guy's a weapon. He's also a big adventurer. He's climbed 387 mountains and loves to weave together adventure and entrepreneurship. He's run peer groups for the last 8 years, helping other business owners do this. But it was really exciting to get into his world and his story of being a dad and how he's navigated all these big roller coaster business moves while still being really connected to his sons. He has 3 adult sons, and they all invite him on trips with their friends. So this is a guy who's 55. He's got adult sons that are in their 20s and 30s, and the sons are inviting Chris to go on gravel biking trips with their friends and things like that. And I was really curious about the dynamic that has led for that to happen, because that's one of my goals. It's something that my dad has created with us, me and my brothers, and it's something that I want to be able to have with my daughter and my family. So this conversation is a lot about Chris's initial story, some of the crazy roller coaster moves that he's had, risk, legacy, and adventure. He's huge into weaving that together. I really hope you enjoy this. So where are you right now?
I'm sitting at the airport in Vancouver, about to jump on a flight to Winnipeg to speak to a group of business owners tomorrow in Winnipeg, and then I'm off to Calgary tomorrow night to speak to a group of business owners and leaders in Calgary. So, and then back Friday night. So I'm speaking across Canada quite a bit these days to business owners and doing keynotes and stuff. So yeah.
And what do you have a specific topic that you're addressing with some of these groups?
Actually, I've got 2 different presentations I'm doing. One is called the 7 Steps to Taking the Leap. I consider myself to be a risk management expert. And this talk walks people through fear, understanding fear, how to overcome fear, push through fear. I go into some biohacking around that in terms of how your brain and your body works. It's a little bit of, grade 9 biology, but most people forgot all of that stuff. And then we go into the whole risk. What is risk? How do we deal with risk? And I've developed some risk mitigation tools that I used in my own businesses to help business owners identify, mitigate, and hopefully even eliminate risk. So that's my risk talk. That's tomorrow. And then on Friday, I'm delivering a different presentation called the Uncertainty Playbook. This one's all about how do we deal with the uncertainty that's happening in our lives, the high levels of anxiety, the wars, politics, global change, disasters, AI, robotics, technology, big data. So how do we cope with everything that's going on in our world today? So I have a 3-step process everything I do is a series of 3 steps generally. First, it's identifying what they can't control. Then it's identifying the things they can control, and really identifying and surrendering the things they can't control, identifying the things they can control. And then we dive deep into that, and we basically look at what are the things that we can be doing. What's the first step we need to take? So it's not overwhelming. It's getting people on the right trajectory. But first, we have to deal with getting the uncertainty and the fear out of their lives. So yeah, they're the 2 presentations I'm delivering this week.
Very exciting. And definitely feels very relevant. I feel like a lot of the conversations I've been having recently, I don't think anybody would be able to place their finger on the fact that it is uncertainty that has them feeling a certain way. But once that label's there, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I see that.
Yeah, but people don't know what to do with it, right? And they become overwhelmed, and they become anxious, and they become scared, and they become fearful. And I've developed systems and processes and strategies and tactics to actually identify these issues and deal with them.
Yeah.
enable people to become unfrozen, unstuck, and move forward in their lives, in their careers, in their businesses.
So it was not where I was planning to go with our talk, but at some point I want to get into some of that more of that stuff, because that I geek out on that stuff. But would love to set the context of who you are, and I'll end up doing a bit of an intro at the start of this separately.
Okay.
But was curious to just go back in time a little bit to when you first realized that you would be an entrepreneur, or like your first kind of hit that was something in your future.
I think it happened the day my dad got home on a Friday afternoon from doing a big business deal. And my parents were from England. They immigrated to Australia in 1950, where I was born in Sydney with my two brothers. And he had a machine tool engineering business. And actually, the remnants of it still exist today in Australia, although he's been long gone and somebody else owns it now. But I remember him coming home one day, and I was probably only about 8 or 10 or something. And we went to the back. He had a Lotus Europa. He was always into British sports cars. And he opened not the trunk, because it was like a mid-engine car, but he opened the hood of the car, and in there was a pile of cash. He'd done a cash deal. And I just remember him grabbing this money and just going like this. And I'm like, I don't know, that made an impact on me. I thought, yeah, man, I got to get into business. I got to be a business owner like my dad. I think it was a cash deal, right?
Yeah.
But I thought that was such a cool thing. And I was at an age where it was pretty impressionable. That was one of the things. And then one of the other things was my dad had business partners. He had one in Sydney, one in Stockholm in Sweden, and one in Birmingham in England. And he would buy and sell machines. He'd buy machines from Europe, through what his partners would find, bring them to Australia. He would rebuild these machines in Australia and then sell them to companies like BHP and have you, before the Chinese and the South Koreans and the Taiwanese were making machines for half the price. That's how it used to be done. And I went on a trip with my dad to England when I was 10. He used to take my brothers and I with him occasionally. And I got dropped off at my grandparents, sorry. And I went hiking through the Yorkshire Moors and in the Lake District with my dad with my granddad, while my dad was off buying machines basically all over Europe. And then he'd always take a week and go down to Spain and go to bullfights and drink lots of cheap wine. And he'd rent a car and drive down there from England. And then I basically wouldn't see him for a month. And then I would fly back with him. And he would always stop in Hong Kong on the way back to Australia. And he'd always buy the latest gizmo, the latest gadget. Like, I was the first kid to have a digital alarm clock. I was the first kid to have a digital watch. I was the first kid to have a calculator. We were the first family to have like a color TV or a microwave or a vacuum cleaner. Like, he was just always on the cutting edge. But I remember that our lifestyle is not that it was grandiose or anything, but I always remembered that we went on trips, we had fun, and it was because my dad was an entrepreneur. And I believe he was the first true adventurepreneur, which is what I call myself.
Can you speak more to that? What is an adventurepreneur?
Yeah, and it's really cool. I just got my registered trademark back earlier on Friday last week. So now it's a officially registered trademark in the world. And but it is the combination of adventure and business, adventure and entrepreneurialism. And when we think about and I've been like fighting with this most of my life, like, I'm an adventurer. I go off on these crazy adventures. I do crazy shit. And then I built, bought, and sold 9 businesses over 15 years. Like, I was an aggressive entrepreneur. And I was always struggling with like these. I had these like 2 parts of my life. Like, I would be an adventurer and I would be an entrepreneur. And one day I kind of had an epiphany, and I'm like, well, let's just join the 2 words together, because that's what I am. That's what my dad was. I'm an adventurepreneur. I'm an adventure-seeking entrepreneur. And so for me today, that's my target audience. I want to work with the million adventurepreneurs that are out there in the world, those adventure-seeking entrepreneurs that don't know that they are adventure-seeking entrepreneurs. I need to unlock that opportunity for them. And quite a few of the clients I work with today are just that. They're adventure-seeking entrepreneurs. So we do things a lot different in our coaching relationships to what most people do. I'm out there hiking and skiing and mountain climbing and rock climbing and multi-day trips with my clients. It's a little different to the average coaching relationship.
And you are coaching business owners. You are like a consultant business coach.
Yeah.
Today, you're also running some peer groups. We probably won't have the time to go through everything that's happened in between that first inkling that you'd be an entrepreneur. But maybe just some highlights of how you got to where you are today, advising, coaching, and running these adventures.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I got back from that trip as a 10-year-old, I convinced my parents to let me join Cub Scouts because two of my best mates, Ian and David, had joined Scouts while I was away. And that was incredible. At the age of 14, I went to the World Jamboree in Melbourne, Australia, and there was 40,000 scouts there from around the world. And I met kids from Vancouver, from Pokhara in Nepal, from, Zermatt in Switzerland, and from Chamonix and in France, and all these different places around the world. And I just remember wanting to go to all of these places. And at the age of 17, I got into the construction industry. I had pre-qualified to go to university and become a civil engineer, but I ended up landing a summer job that my dad helped me get. No, I'm not ashamed of that at all, through a buddy of a buddy. And next thing you know, I'm a surveyor working in the construction industry. And I progressed through the ranks very quickly. I ended up doing school, night school, because I was working 6 days a week, didn't have time to go to university. I did a survey diploma, I did a management diploma, and I ended up, being out there by the age of 20. I was running projects as a site manager, superintendent, doing all the surveying. And then at the age of 22, I had my own company on the side. I was doing survey work for our subcontractors, borrowing the company's gear that I worked for, the fifth largest company in Australia called John Holland Construction. And my dad had retired by now, and he was working for me as my assistant, as my rodman, as my survey assistant. And
what was that like?
Oh, that was freaking awesome. My dad and I had a fantastic relationship, right? And we were sitting there one Sunday afternoon eating our lunch that our mum had made for us in Botany Bay in Sydney, right next to the airport. And we're watching ships come and go. We're watching planes come and go. And I said to my dad, "Dad, where's that plane going?" He's like, "Oh, well, that's a BOAC, pre-British Airways. So that's probably going to London." "Who's on the plane?" "Oh, there'll be business owners and people going to see their family in, England and what have you." And, "Well, how do you get on a plane?" "We just buy a ticket." Cool. So the next day I went into Sydney Flight Centre and I bought a one-way ticket to London, and I left that Friday. And thankfully, my parents had kept our passports current because they would occasionally take us off to England to see family. And here I was at the age of 22, jumping on a plane and flying to England. And that began the start of a 7-year journey visiting 65 countries around the world. And when I ran out of money every 3, 6, 9, 12 months, I would go back to Australia. I would get my old job back. I had developed a knack of being the guy that got the projects out of the ground. I did all the ugly, nasty, shitty, muddy, sketchy shoring survey, get the projects set up, get the jobs out of the ground, out of the mud. And then I would take off on another trip. And then the other guys would come in who didn't want to get their boots dirty, and they would take over the project. So whenever I got back, there was nearly always another project about to get underway. So I worked my way through the construction industry very quickly. And then I met my wife when she was backpacking around Australia, and I chased her to Whistler 36 years ago, and we got married, and I just celebrated 36 years of marriage with her.
Congrats.
We had 3 boys. And like most entrepreneurs, I was working for a company. I was pretty much running the company. We were bigger than Kiewit, bigger than Graham, bigger than Leadcore. It was called SCI, or Walter and SCI became Walter Construction. We were doing, $350 million worth of work down at Anasis and Lulu. And then all of a sudden they got into financial difficulty. They had German ownership. And I said, screw it, I'm out of here. And then I ended up starting a new business with one of my subcontractors. And he underwrote the bond. He was my silent partner. That lasted a couple of years. And then I ended up buying a company in 2000. And I bought the company cheap that was about to wind up. It was a union company. And everyone's like, what the hell are you doing buying a union company? But I had a business coach at the time. And he said, Chris, everyone's decertifying. Who's going to do all the union work? Who's going to do the TELUS work? Who's going to do the hydro work? Who's going to do the work in all the bulk loading terminals and the breweries and the refineries? And I didn't even know about that world. I was just in the public tender world doing like Ministry of Highway and Metro Vancouver type projects. And so I bought this company for a song. I got a couple of old pickup trucks and a couple of containers of worn out small tools. And 8 years later, I built that company from $1 million a year to $15 million a year and sold it. And then I got into power line construction. I did 5 acquisitions in the next 2 years, had a new partner, had a lot of fun with that until 2012 when my dad passed away. I had 6 operating companies. We were on track to do 50 million. And most of what I learned through trial and error. Didn't go to school for business or do an MBA or anything like that. Ended up being in a peer group where I learned a lot from other business owners. But then my dad passed and my family and I decided to pack up and move to Australia. So we just sold the house, sold the farm, packed up, moved to Australia, lived there for 4 years, and was trying to run these companies from Australia. That didn't work so well. And my new boss, Lend-Lease, new company I was working for, they're like a $20 billion a year company. They said, Chris, we understand you own some businesses. You've got a week to get rid of them. So I ended up having to exit the companies unplanned. 5 of the companies, 3 of them I gave to my employees. They took over the leases. 2 of them I shut down. And 1 of them we found a private investor to come in and basically buy the debt. That was the power line company, which became Rockstad Construction. That was a company that Aaron Rockstad and I built together back in 2008. So yeah, that was my journey. Here I was now in Australia, and I ended up on this $1 billion project, which turned into a $3.6 billion project. And I ran that for the next 4 years before I hated Sydney, missed Vancouver, and then convinced my wife and kids that we needed to pack up and move back to Vancouver, my happy place. So that's a long-winded story, but that's an abridged version of my career.
That's a lot. And I'm sensing a lot of like very decisive, like, hey, we're going to Australia, and hey, we're going back to Vancouver, like a very decisive.
That's the big thing about entrepreneurs, right? Adventurepreneurs is when you're hanging on the side of the cliff, you don't have time to do a complex risk analysis and get the spreadsheets out and talk to a whole bunch of advisors. You have to make a decision. And one of the things I learned very quickly in business, those business owners and entrepreneurs and CEOs, the ones that are successful are the ones that just make a decision. Because indecision can cripple companies. Indecisiveness can cripple businesses. And the crazy thing is, we'll never know whether that was the right decision or the wrong decision. But we made a decision and we moved forward. And I know when I was in my early stages of my career, when I worked with decisive leaders, there was always a lot better. You knew what you were doing. You knew where you were headed. It didn't matter whether it was wrong or right. This was the boss. This is what you were doing. And this is a decision. And that's where we went. So I've lived my entire life like that. Make a decision, go for it.
Yeah. So you've learned that as a core skill, and it sounds like you've lived into that.
That's just part of my DNA.
I get that sense. I was curious what you've learned or what you learned from your dad. If there was some key things about business and life that have really held true for you.
My dad, as I mentioned, I believe he was the first true adventurepreneur, and I had a great relationship with my dad. So losing him was pretty difficult. Um, but my dad was an immigrant. He moved to Australia because it was half the price of immigrating to Canada. He really wanted to go to Canada, but it was £20 per person. And he kind of told a little white lie to my mum and her parents that it was a honeymoon they were going on. But it wasn't a honeymoon. It was a one-way honeymoon. They were immigrating to Australia, right? But, he just always figured it out. And he took risks. I mean, he was into racing motorbikes at the time, and then he got into racing speedboats, building his own engines and stuff. And I used to hang out with my dad on the weekends. Saturdays, we work around the house. So I learned how to basically build a house at a very early age. Sundays were car days. Sundays, we would pull engines apart, gearboxes apart. I built my first motorbike when I was 12, a mini bike. I started racing motorbikes when I was 16. I started racing rally cars when I was 17. Like, we'd just build our own engines. So we just learned how to do all this stuff. So my dad was one of these guys who just fixed stuff. If there was a problem, he got a book from the library. Today, he'd have gone online, figured out how to do something, and just got it done. He wouldn't go out there asking people. He'd just figure it out. So I grew up with somebody who just learned how to figure stuff out, right? Solve problems and get on with life. So I spent a lot of time hanging out with my dad, and he was my hero. But he stopped going on adventures, which is why I needed to get into Scouts, so I could go on adventures with my mates, because he didn't want to do that anymore. But yeah, that's a little bit about my dad. Definitely have a lot of respect for him. It was sad that, I moved away from Australia, so I didn't get to see him as often as I did, but we would see one another every year. We would go to Australia every other year for a month, and then my mum and dad would come to Canada every other year. So we would actually see them for a month, a year, probably more than my brothers saw them when they were living just down the road from them in Australia, the occasional Sunday night dinner.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Can't complain too much.
Yeah. And I'm curious how that relationship with your dad and how you connected with him, how is that translated into being a dad now and how you lead and show up for your family?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have 3 boys. They're now 25, 27, and 30. When my first son was born, I could have done without the first 3 years of his life. He was colic. He screamed. I was running the Westview Interchange at the time in North Vancouver. It was the very first design build project ever done in Western Canada. I wrote the proposal, negotiated the contract, and was the project manager. I would get home at 5 o'clock at night, then 6 o'clock, then 7 o'clock, then 8 o'clock. I would walk in the door. My wife would hand me my eldest son and say, I'm going to bed. He's been screaming all day. And then he would proceed to scream all night. And my first 3 years were a blur. I was walking around, my wife and I were walking around like zombies. We used to try and loan him out to people as a form of contraception, because we figured that if anybody ever babysit him, they would never want to have a kid. But anyway, then we had a second one and a third one, and they were perfect angels. And today they've all turned out as relatively normal kids. But I got them into skiing when they were 3. I got them off their training wheels when they were 3. I got them into mountain biking when they were 5. We were skiing up in the Okanagan when they were 5 or 6. We would ski together as a family. We'd be off on camping trips, taught them how to, survive in the wilderness. They would pack their own bags. So my kids grew up as explorers and adventurers, whether they knew it or not, at a very, very early age. I remember putting them into Cubs and Scouts when they were 8 or 10 or something. And after a few months, they said to me, Dad, this is ridiculous. We're the ones teaching the Scoutmaster how to light a fire. We're teaching them how to put up the tents. We're teaching them how to do this is a joke. So they dropped out, right? Because I'd taught them all of that before they even turned 10, right? So it's just, my kids are my best mates. We still do trips together. This year, a testimony to our relationship, they invited me to go skiing with them and their mates to Japan for a month. So we skied incredible knee and waist deep powder I was there for a couple of weeks. They were there for a month. We go gravel biking together. We go backcountry skiing together. We've already got 3 trips on the calendar for this coming winter. We're just done stuff together. My oldest son got into downhill mountain bike racing. He got me into downhill mountain bike racing with him. He was top 3 in Canada, top 3 in Australia, top 100 in the world. I was the BC provincial champion at the age of 50 in my category. Then I broke my neck for the second time, but that's another story. My middle son got into downhill longboarding when he was 14. He was the youngest pro downhill longboarder in the world. I don't know. They got all these crazy extreme habits from their mum, I guess.
Yeah.
They all broke their legs at least once before they were 10 doing stupid shit that we used to do together. But we have lots of stories as a family, and we're still out there sending it. That's the title of my new podcast. That's the title of my new book, The Art of Sending It. So I've been pretty much sending it with my kids for my entire life, and we're still sending it.
I love that. And I'm assuming that's given you a common thing to connect on, like doing those activities. But I'm sure there's guys listening and they're like, how do you maintain that relationship? Like, what is it? How do you craft a family and connection so that your kids invite you on trips? I think that's like, I have a 3-year-old daughter.
Yep.
That's kind of like life goal stuff. It's like when she's 20 and she's like, hey dad, let's go do this thing with my friends. I'd be like, I've made it.
Exactly. That's the definition of making it, right? Not only that, hey dad, I've got 2 girlfriends that want to come camping with us this weekend. Can they come with us? Like that.
Yeah.
You've made it, right?
But if you look back at how you connected with them, are there any principles or things that you did differently that you think allowed for that connection and relationship to continue and deepen?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been involved. You've got to be an involved parent. And that was one of the reasons why I'm not an entrepreneur today, because I didn't, there was a point in time when I went down the rabbit hole of chasing money. The definition of success in North America is, a bigger net worth, right? And it's measured because it's easy to measure it in terms of dollars, right? So that's a driving force behind a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, and why people often want to leave their job and go out and be an entrepreneur. I always say there's 2 types of entrepreneurs. There's one who wants to create something, build something. They're passionate about something, right? It doesn't exist. Can you hear that? Oh, that's good. And then there's another type of entrepreneur who's pissed off with their boss. It's like, screw this. I can do this better. I'm going to go out and launch my own business. And more often than not, 2 to 5 years later, all they've done is replicate the boss they worked for, and they became that person. And so one of the things I did when my eldest was 5, I started coaching him in soccer. I'm an Aussie, right? I can't ice skate. So, lacrosse and ice skating and basketball and, baseball, this is foreign sports for me, right? I was a rugby guy and I played soccer and swimming and, camping and the wilderness, right? So, I got my kids into soccer and I coached them for 15 years, from when the oldest was 5 to when the youngest was 15. And I spent a lot of time with them. And, they have fantastic relationships with those kids. I know all those kids. We go on a gravel bike trip. We go on a ski trip. Guess what? They're kids that played soccer when they were like 5 and 10 and 12 and 15 years old. I just went hiking with a couple of them yesterday. I had personal relationships with their friends. We go on a gravel bike trip for 5 days. It's me, my 3 boys, and 6 of their mates. I'm the old guy, but I'm keeping up with them. Chances are I'm dropping them on the descents and I'm chasing them on the climbs because I'm an ex-downhiller, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that I wasn't one of those parents who told my kids what to do. My kids do whatever they want to do. But I would influence the outcome by teaching them how to ski, teaching them how to ride a bike and teaching them how to rock climb. They're all better skiers and climbers and rock climbers than I am today. I got them in the things that I knew and I loved. We spent a lot of time in the wilderness together, just going hiking and snowshoeing as a family with my wife and our dog. And so we spent a lot of quality time together. Have you ever heard of something called the theory of attachment?
Yes. Yeah. I'd love for you to explain it further though, because I know of it, but to be able for me to define it.
So there's a book on this. I don't know what it's called. I haven't read the book, but I understand the theory. The theory is that between the age of 12 to 16, since about the Second World War, and I think it had something to do with television, maybe in the 50s or 60s, but let's just say pre-20th century, children were attached to their parents emotionally until they found a mate and went off and started their own families, which used to be a lot younger than it is today.
Right.
During the 50s and 60s, something really weird happened around the world where parents got replaced by their peers. And the other thing that happened is families were started a lot later. So now often anywhere between the age of 12 and 16, a lot of kids become emotionally detached from their parents, and they shift that attachment from their parents to their peers. And some parents lose their kids for 10 years. They're physically there, but they're emotionally disconnected. And it's tough for parents. But that's part of just growing up these days. I was very fortunate that through the activities and the relationship that my wife and I had with our boys, we didn't really have that separation. We were able to continue to do things together, and they wanted to hang out with us, and we wanted to hang out with them. And as I say, invariably, it was one of them saying, hey, can I bring a couple of my mates along on this camping trip? Or can we do this, or can we do that? And because I was involved in youth groups, and I was running a little hiking club in the church for a while, and the soccer, and then I was involved in doing mountain bike racing camps as a mountain bike coach. I got to know all their mates, and so I'm just like one of the guys, even though I'm 40 years older. So that's what happened for me, but I can't talk about other people's lives.
Yeah, it's interesting because I look at the connection that I have with my brothers and my parents, and it feels similar. Like when my brother got married, my dad was at the stag. Like there was just a connection that we've had and continue to have, that I don't necessarily see other places. And that's why I was curious to know what could be some of those sparks or things that you committed to that allowed that to happen. And the soccer thing, I see that my dad was committed as a soccer coach for us for a long time. And the adventure side of stuff, they would take us traveling. We drove across Canada every summer to Ontario as a family, and we'd be stuck in the car. Those are the things that you remember. And it's you bond through some of those things. And obviously there was times where I would push back on it. There was definitely that window of time that you talked to where I was pushing away, but there was still, we were still doing stuff together. And I think that's pulled us through. And I love spending time with them. I love going to do stuff with them.
It's awesome. I wish my dad was still here. I wish I could go and have a beer with him and, have a chat.
Yeah.
So, I think that's part of how we raise our children and parents, right? And I needed to finish sharing that story about the whole money thing, right? Because I came home late one night, probably a golf tournament out in the valley with a bunch of clients, or maybe with my team or whatever, or maybe I just gotten home from 4 days in Vegas at the World of Concrete or something like that. And I got cornered in the hallway. And it was pretty much like, when did it all become about money? And, I was in a group with other business owners, and it was starting to become more about who had the biggest house, who had the nicest cabin up in Whistler, who had the nicest ski boat up on the lake at the cabin in the Okanagan, who's going on the biggest trips, whatever. It became a bit of a competition, a bit of a one-upmanship. And I kind of got a little suckered into that world. And it was always around net worth, comparisons. And I talked about how I built that business in 4 years and did 5 acquisitions in 2.5 years, right? This was a competition. My goal was to get to 100 million and sell the business for 100 million in 5 years. And that did happen. Unfortunately, I'd left to move to Australia, so I wasn't able to be a recipient of that check, because, I just needed to go to Australia and be with my mum and my brothers. And family was more important, right? But my wife did a very good job of kind of like that smack on the side of the head with a 4x2 or 2x4, as we call them in Canada. And it was a wake-up call. And I got defensive, I'm reaching for a beer out of the fridge as if I hadn't had enough. But I processed it over the weekend, and she was absolutely right. Something had snapped. And I was now more interested in money. And so that was another reason why I had to essentially give those businesses away and exit those businesses, because I've since realized that money, the famous quote, money doesn't buy happiness. People will say, oh, it sure does help. But I don't think it makes you a better person. And now I devote my time to helping other leaders, other owners, and other entrepreneurs not only create a successful journey for themselves and their families and their businesses, but we just don't focus on the money as much. We focus more on lifestyle. We focus more on relationships. We focus more on, are we doing the right thing? Like, I used to do a lot of work in the oil and gas sector, and then I stopped doing it after I went to Fort McMurray, and I'm like, this is an ecological disaster. So I started doing like run-of-the-river projects and solar farms and wind farms in Alberta and transmission work and clean energy work. And we make decisions, we make choices as business owners where we're going to focus our energy. And everybody that worked for me at the time was totally aligned with that shift in focus. So we get to make the decisions. That's one of the things that, yesterday I've got my poppy on still today, because, we live in one of the freest countries in the world. We are so fortunate that people that have gone before us and made it possible for us to live the life we live. I never forget that. My dad was in the Royal Navy. He was on a minesweeper. Every day could have been his last. He lost 80% of his mates. Every time he got back to England on leave every 3 months, he'd find out about another one of his schoolmates that had died in the trenches somewhere in Germany or France or Italy or something. So I have this deep regard for family and for those that have gone before and made it possible for us to live the lives we live. And so why does it need to all become about money? It doesn't. Why can't it be around other people and looking at how we can help other people? Like, you're a business coach, Fife. You became a business coach not to become rich. You became a business coach because you know the work you do is important, and you get to help other business owners. You get to help them have better relationships with their spouse and better relationships with their kids. That's a legacy that we have the choice to make. And so I'm always interested in hearing about people's legacies. What do they want to leave behind? How do they want to be remembered? Not how much money did I have?
Yeah.
And if I could share one more story, Fife.
Yeah.
I was 14 years old doing my Queen Scout Award. I had community badge that I had to get. It was one of 25 badges I had to get. And the examiner of this particular badge was the local minister of the church that I went to with my mum. And he required me to go and interview 50 seniors in like 2 or 3 different, seniors' homes. And I had to come up with questions. And the last question I asked was, what is your fondest memory? Every single one of the 50 seniors between the ages 65 and 102 that I interviewed, they all said the same thing. Do you want to hazard a guess at what that was?
Yeah, some kind of family connecting memory.
Exactly. Every single one of them said a significant event with family. It could have been a holiday. It could have been a wedding. It could have been an anniversary party. It could have been a wake. It could have been whatever, camping, some kind of family celebration. Nobody talked about how much money they had. Nobody talked about how many houses they had. Nobody talked about, their garage full of Audis like I used to have. Like nobody talked about anything related to money or business. They all talked about family. They were their fondest memories. And at the age of 14, Fife, that made an incredible, indelible impact on me. I wanted to be one of those people who, when I got asked that question, that I was able to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Not, oh, I've got a big house in Whistler and a nice ski boat, up in the Okanagan, and I go on all these trips every year and I have all this money and a net worth of that. I own all these companies. Like, that's just wrong. It's misguided. It's a false definition of success that's been created specifically, I think, in North America.
Yeah.
To like brainwash us into thinking that we need to have all this stuff. And I think the opportunity today to go back to our kids is really, how do we get them off these bloody things? How do we get them off the couch? And how do we get them outside being kids, building forts, building sandcastles, building mud pies, climbing trees, messing around down at the skateboard park, going for a hike in the forest around SFU or up to the North Shore Mountains. Like, that's our challenge, is getting kids off social media, off devices, and outside into the wilderness, because that is where we were designed to be, not sitting in front of a freaking laptop on a Zoom call.
Yeah. What's funny though is, like, I 100% agree with all of that. And I think honestly, it's probably more so, how do we get the parents off this stuff and out doing that stuff with their kids? Because I think there's a lot of resistance and there's a lot of uphill battle for the parents to actually model doing that and then get their kids to come along with them.
Yep.
How are you doing for time? I'm
good.
You're good? Okay.
Good.
I had a couple more questions. So you're speaking about that slap aside the head where you had to have that wake up call, and I'm sure there's going to be other people that listen to this where they've gotten sucked down that road naturally, however they are, but they're like sucked down that road of comparison, chasing the money. It's an easy metric to see progress. And I'm pretty convinced now that motivation comes from seeing progress. And that's why we lean into that. It's a very easy way to see progress, and progress is motivating. So it's kind of like, it's a flywheel that starts.
Yep.
How did you walk that back? So you got the slap in the head, but like, it's one thing to get the slap, but to walk yourself back from that and back to the roots of what real success and happiness is through those interviews, like reconnecting to that. I'm sure that wasn't just a light switch, but like,
it actually was a light switch.
It was.
But I fought it for a long time. I kept wanting to turn the dimmer back up. And I'm still fighting it some might say, because deep down, I'm cursed as an adventurepreneur. I write about this in my book that I'm going to be finishing soon, my second book. And some people just are cursed to be entrepreneurs, and they're cursed to be adventurers. And if you put them together, they're cursed to be adventurepreneurs. And it's not something that we necessarily choose to do. We can choose to get into business, but we don't choose to be driven. We don't choose to be passionate about something we believe in. So that's kind of something we need to understand. And some of us are just driven. You know, we're incredibly driven. We're incredibly ambitious. And so really the thing that, you know, took time was to realize that there's other ways to measure and define success other than by money. And it's not as easy to measure, but I think at the end of the week, when you ask yourself, how was your week? I can look at transformations that have occurred in discussions and through relationships with my clients and friends and family members. And that's what reminds me that I'm doing the right work. I'm doing the right thing. Yeah. I'm sure as heck not doing it for the money. Because I get lots of offers to start another business and, you know, go back to being an entrepreneur again. But I know what that life looks like. I've had the houses, I've had the cars, I've had the expensive trips around the world with my family. And, you know, it doesn't make you any happier. Sitting around the dinner table last night, having a nice Remembrance Day dinner and talking about how fortunate we are and how lucky we are to live where we live in Vancouver, BC, Canada. Yeah, it just, you talked about wine in a bag. There was times when I had regrets, absolutely. But they were short-lived. I think sitting here today, I have absolutely no regrets about anything I've ever done in my life, whether it was breaking and damaging half the bones in my body or whether it was, you know, businesses that I either sold or I exited, unplanned exits, because, you know, it's for the right reason. It was for family. It was for keeping the family together. It was about spending time with my mum in Australia and giving my kids the opportunity to have personal relationships with their cousins and their aunts and uncles. Mm-hmm. You know, we 2 years ago, for my 60th birthday, I rented a villa in Chamonix in France with my younger brother, and we had 15 of us there. Nieces, nephews, boyfriends, girlfriends. There was no snow. We got unlucky with the weather, but we had a great time together. And we now get together every couple of years somewhere in the world, and we do these destination family reunions. And as the families grow and as the kids get married and have kids, this is something that we want to do every 2 years for the rest of our life. And we hope that we're creating a legacy piece here, where people can see how important it is to have those amazing family relationships and to build on those. So that's the legacy. That's the piece that we can leave behind, and we can demonstrate the importance of the answer to that question. Mm-hmm. We might get asked one day when we're a senior in a retirement home and some kid comes in doing a school project, or I don't know if there's even any more Boy Scouts around anymore, but hey, Fife, or, you know, Mr. Barronclough, when you were, you know, you're 85 now, like, what's your fondest memory? How would you like to respond to that question when you're 85?
Well, even right now, if you were to put me on the spot and ask me, like, what is my fondest memory?
Yeah.
It would be family related. It would be like getting the hug from my 3-year-old daughter. It would be the, like skiing as a family, or like a family trip that we've done.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a big crazy trip. Like those times I have 2 younger brothers. So there's the three brothers, my two
Oh,
cousins,
like,
my two cousins, my mom, my aunt, two dogs,
yeah.
all packed into a Suburban, driving across to Ontario, and like it was chaos, but that's the kind of the stuff that you remember and
Yeah.
that you like you
Yeah.
think about.
Yeah.
Um, so even right now, if you put me on the spot, like my mind goes to those things,
Yeah.
but I think nobody takes the time to slow down and think right now, like what was your fondest memory today?
Yeah.
What were those peak moments? And those are the things that when we actually slow down and reflect and get some clarity on, I think that gives us those markers for values to make decisions on.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there's another interesting thing around that, and that is the fact I don't know, not a week goes by where I don't hear about somebody else getting diagnosed with cancer. Or I don't hear about somebody. I just was on a call with one of my clients this morning, and his younger brother had a fall and smashed his face up, pushed his nose back into his brain, and he's got brain damage. It's just crazy. Just tripped on the floor, going down the set of stairs into the basement in the dark, didn't turn the light on, misjudged the bottom step, smashed his face. I mean, it's just terrible, right? But we never know when our number's going to come up, right? We never know when we're going to get hit by a bus, get a terminal diagnosis like my father-in-law got like 20 years ago, but he's still kicking. Like, we just never know. So we've got to live every moment like it's its last. That's what I believe. And that's what I've tried to do throughout my life. Enjoy the moment, appreciate every moment you get. Don't take anything for granted. Live life to the fullest. When people hear and look at my calendar, they're like, what the? Like, are you serious? But I never know when the number's going to come up. So I'm just trying to cram in as much stuff as I can.
yeah.
Spend as much time as I can with my family and my friends and my clients. And yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of legacy, which you've talked about a few times now, what are you excited to leave behind, or what really feels fulfilling for you when you think about that?
Sorry, I'm going to need you to repeat that question because there's an announcement going on in the background. I didn't hear it.
Yeah. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, it's pretty easy, man. I want to inspire people to get off their ass, get outside, and go on an adventure and discover who the real you are. That's what I want to motivate people to do. And, you know, if they look at my life and look at what's possible, and there's people out there sending it way more than I am. But, you know, I've been to 112 countries. I've climbed 387 mountains, visited 247 World UNESCO Heritage Sites, and driven 1.375 million kilometers around the face of this earth. And how do I know that? Because I track everything. I'm a goal setter. I set very aggressive and ambitious goals, and I measure my progress. My goal is to climb 1,000 mountains before I die. I need to climb 25 mountains a year to do that. And this year, I've only climbed 10 mountains so far. So I'm falling behind the schedule, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I keep pushing myself. I just want my legacy to be, I want to be remembered as somebody that's like, holy shit. Like, that guy lived a full life. He touched a lot of lives. He made a lot of difference in people's lives. And there was one of the problems with being an owner and entrepreneur is you can only touch the lives of the people that work for you. But when you work with business owners and business leaders, now I have the ability to impact so many more lives. And so that's part of the legacy, is being able to change the conversation, get people off their devices, off the couch, outside, learn a little bit about what they're capable of, because I guarantee you, everybody is capable of way more than what they're currently telling themselves they're capable of. One of the things I love talking about is self-limiting beliefs. How do we remove the self-limiting beliefs, and how do we take the first step to beginning that journey of adventure?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever form or whatever shape that takes for you and your listeners. That's the only question you have to ask. And then what's the first thing I'm going to do about it? What's the first step? Freaking put your runners on and walk out the door. Like, just get off, go for a walk.
Move.
Move.
I have a thing on
Take
my
your
wall.
spouse, take your son, take your daughter, take your client, whatever. Just get outside, get off the devices, get off your ass, go on an adventure.
Yeah.
It is life changing.
Yeah.
It is transformative. And the people that get it are the ones that live a very, very full life with a lot of amazing memories. And they leave a legacy behind those that follow.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've shared a lot of wisdom, and there's more I will extract from you at some point as we get to know each other a little bit more. What's something you want to remind yourself of? So let's say you get to listen to this 6 months from now, 9 months from now, and you get to listen to this recording. What's one thing that you want to remind yourself of?
Don't make it about myself. Make it about the other person. The only reason I share the stats I share is to motivate people, not to brag, not to have an ego. I think therein lies the opportunity. I've never been really high on the emotional intelligence scale. As a good old contractor. So always keeping focused on the other person. What's important to them?
Mm.
And how do we empower them and motivate them and coach them without telling them?
Yeah.
So lead by example, but recognize that everybody else is on their own journey. And so I think the opportunity for us all as leaders is to empower others to have some idea of what they want their legacy to be and what are they doing about it today, every day, to move one step closer to that goal. Because we never know when we're going to get chopped off at the knees, get that fatal diagnosis, get hit by a bus, killed in a car crash. It's not our fault. We just never know.
Mm-hmm.
So let's make the most of every day and empower those around us. So I think, for me, it's really shifting the focus, always being careful to make sure that the focus is on others, not on me. That's my opportunity.
Yeah. Chris, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for jumping on. Where can people find you and what you're up to?
Yeah, probably just my website, chrishardwickinc.com. Book a 15-minute call. Let's get to know one another. The only thing we'll do in that 15-minute call is decide whether or not we want to go for a walk together. Do a walk in one-to-one with a coffee or a beer in hand.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what that 15-minute call is about.
Yeah.
To schedule the first outing, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm on LinkedIn and Google, Chris Hardwick Leadership, and I've got, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but my website, chrishardwickinc.com, is probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Awesome.
Or send me a message on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So it's still recording, but I'll kind of chop it up.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no, that was fun. I know it's a lot to absorb.
Well, there's a lot. There's so many angles. I was like, we could go here. We could go way deeper there. Like, there's not enough time.
I have been interviewed more than once by some podcasters.
Yeah.
Well, always opportunity to go deeper at a later date.
Yeah. Because I mean, there's so much around some of the business experience too. And like some of the really challenging times and how you navigated that was like one we could take. And I was just like,
Yeah. And I'm fortunate enough to have gone through a few crashes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tech crash in the 90s to the, real estate crash in the 2008 to the COVID in 2020, 2020. And there'll be more in the future, right? What we're going through right now with Trump and, politics and everything else. But yeah, my flight is bought in.
Awesome.
So that
good timing.
And I got 3 missed calls from a guy I was supposed to talk to at 12:30. He's in Ontario, but I will call him back as I'm waiting to get on the plane. I better pack up my laptop and everything, but hopefully the sound quality was okay. And unfortunately, I got a bit of a.
I think it worked out all right.
But yeah, cool.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. I'll let you board.
I'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Or whenever we schedule that meeting for.
You bet.
Okay.
Take it easy.
You're going to send me the transcript, right?
The transcript of this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want it?
Yeah. You got Fathom Note Taker on, right?
Yeah. I don't know if it's auto sending it to you. But I can make sure I send it to you.
Just send it to me. I'll just send it to my VA and she can extract some information out of it.
Yeah. You bet.
I never record a lot of my conversations. So if there's a recording, it's always handy to have.
It's handy with the AI stuff now. You can kind of like put it in and extract some things and learn some stuff. So yeah, I'll pass that on.
All righty. Catch you later, Five. See you.
Chris.
Have an awesome rest of the week and we'll see you next week.
You as well.
The week after. It's the week after, I think. Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah.